So good morning, everyone. Welcome to the second of two show and tells for this project called Net Zero SME. We're going to just assume quickly that people aren't all, part of the project from the beginning, and so this might be their first show and tell. So for that reason, a quick review. These are all the organizations involved. This is a collaborative project. The goal is that we have these massively ambitious, really important targets as a country to massively reduce our carbon to hit this net zero target. SMEs, small businesses, are the vast majority of the economy, and they're a huge part of the solution. And government has set targets like 1 million SMEs to sign up to these commitments. And we're keen as a cohort of organizations that are all interested in SMEs. We're representing them as representative bodies. We're policymakers, etc. We want to make sure that this commitment isn't just a nice, tick in the box. It's actually a really impactful thing that helps to turn the tide dramatically and quickly, and ideally in advance of COP26 that you're hosting in November. So I work for Libertat. We're a very public service focused service design team, and brought on to be somewhat new to this space. So we're the outside eyes that are very interested in understanding how people's minds work, what motivates people to do things, what emotionally are they feeling about the concept of SME? Do they give a toss? So we're very keen on running this discovery process, figuring out what the problem is to try and recommend really impactful solutions from the user needs perspective. We want to understand what users are blocked by, what they need. I'm going to say more about that in one sec. So we're working in the open and in hopefully an agile way, so as to nip things in the bud, to learn quickly from everyone as we go. And that means this is a work in progress. It's quick and dirty, kind of talking about things that we've only just started to conclude yesterday, so that we continue on our discovery process with your inputs in mind. And I've kind of mentioned this already, this is the discovery phase. We're testing assumptions that we have about what will work. So lots of people have ideas because you're more expert than us. Do you turn off the mics there if you're new to the call, unless you can't hear, if that's okay? That's brilliant. So yeah, we want to understand what motivates users, what blocks them, and ultimately we want to build up a map of their experience towards cutting carbon so that we can make informed interventions. That this sprint we developed we kind of focused our research a lot more, started interviewing people in these categories, and started to develop more detailed hypotheses about what needs to happen next, analyze some survey results, and these are what we're going to talk you through. I'm going to give the floor to Katrina for a minute to talk through the big picture, if she's there, or I can.
I am
I'm
here.
sure you're there. Yeah, I just can't see you. Go for it.
Hello. Hi there. So so we've been doing desk research up to now that was providing a broad view of who the SMEs were and what they were trying to do. And we've been doing a bit more sector specific research this time around, trying to sort of dig into what the makeup is. This is the massive caveat to this to start with, is there are variances across the data sets in terms of providing definitive data. But this table that you're looking at on this slide in particular is sourced from basically, it's basically sourced from BPE detailed data. So what we have basically is a situation where most SMEs are micro businesses. That means, and most of them may have no employees. 1.155 million of UK private businesses are micro businesses. That means 1 to 9 employees. So they're an important cohort, and businesses with 2 to 4 employees make up 12.7% of the SMEs. They're more common than those with 1 employee, and that's followed by businesses with 5 to 9 employees, and then 10 to 19 employees. So when it comes to breaking it down into sector specific, construction tends to be the biggest area. And of those, a lot of those have no employees. So that may be your, self-employed builder who may have 1 van or 3 vans and may work with other contractors or partner with other companies. Next is the professional, scientific and technical activities. And again, a significant number of those, more than probably about 4/5 have no employees, and probably 1/5 has 2 to 4 employees. So again, you're talking about people who may be mainly working from home just now, maybe involved in kind of scientific research, maybe working as part of contractors for biotech firms, for instance. Next section is wholesale and retail trade. That's includes repair of motor vehicles and motorcycles. Again, that's a significant area. And then admin and support, info and communication. The most prevalent SME business cohort across all sectors are within non-employing businesses, and the sector divisions with more than 200,000 businesses, which is really significant in terms of making an impact with net zero, are in construction of buildings, retail trade, wholesale trade and repair of motor vehicles and motorcycles, land transport, food and beverage services, and computer programming, consultancy and related activities. And I think I'm going to hand back to Linda at this point.
Cool. I mean, so the thinking at this point was that it's humongous. We need to figure out where we can meaningfully target deep dives. So we made 3 categories of user that spoke to the volume of businesses that Katrina's just outlined, and also those which might be especially carbon intensive. So things that burn lots of fossil fuels, especially vehicles, high energy things, high energy manufacture, and I'm going to blank on the last one, but I'm going to keep going. So like a lot of building maintenance things as well. We decided to focus on a group of woman, man and van businesses that use vans in particular, because that fleshes out a lot of the transport things. We all transport opportunities and levers. We also are going to talk about the blurry line between citizen and business. From a messaging point of view, that's very important. A lot of these people that Katrina's outlined just don't see themselves as SMEs necessarily. And so these are the list of things that that we want to dig into when we're looking at this group. Food manufacturers are energy intensive. They also have supply chain levers. Supply chain is a big issue, but it's also a lever, as in you can't control your carbon in your supply chain, but you can actually influence your supply chain by saying, I'm not buying from you unless you change your ways. Land and property ownership is an important lever, and a lot of businesses who are tenants don't have those. So we wanted to meet these people who might own land and property as well, to understand their levers. And independent retailers help us understand the flip side of that. So a lot of these people are renters. That limits their opportunities, but but some of them will also be owners. So we want to understand that too. And they are very likely to have complex supply chains. So we're keen to dig into that with this cohort as well. I'm going to hand back to Katrina.
Hello. So basically what we're seeing so far is a set of overarching needs that are functional on 3 levels, as it says there. So you have, and this is compounded by obviously what's been happening in the past year with COVID. So you have the element of SMEs who are literally in the needing to either get out debt or dealing with that possibly unsustainable debt. And we know that's a particular problem, even with ability to pay back, bounce back loans, and then basically survival. Then there's the next layer where even if you're surviving, there's necessities of being resilient in the current economy and for future economy, and also compliance with regulations. And obviously that's going to become more of a thing as the kind of net zero regulations and any other relevant regulations come in. And then you have the third layer, and this is where actually this is a potential lever in the SMEs that have ambitions to grow and lead in the climate action space. So literally you have early adopters who may be further up the supply chain, but they have potential to influence across, and obviously they also can lead in that space. I think we move on to the next slide. Okay, so in terms of levers, we do have and some of the things I'm going to talk about are going to be talked more about when we come to the survey results. So basically, when talking about small and medium businesses, they do care about carbon reduction. They do want to do more. They do believe that actually moving to a greener economy after the current pandemic, there are positive opportunities there, and they can see business benefits. So that's really kind of positive, and that's it, considering that some of that research that's being done has been done during the pandemic, and even in a climate where projected recent figures from FSB say that 250,000 small businesses may go under. So that's pretty significant. There is an undercurrent of people feeling they can see that building back Britain with a green economy could have significant benefits for them. So we move on to the next slide. However, so in terms of barriers, there's pretty consistent ones that have been seen in research over years. So basically time and resource. So making net zero priority or climate change priority. Actually knowing where to start, where to find help. That's something that Padma will speak more about in terms of survey results, but has a big impact in terms of what we could usefully be providing for people. The big financial aspect. So again, I talked about this unsustainable debt problem and difficulty of accessing non-bank capital. So we know that's been a problem for years, and actually recent research is again saying that what people need is simple mechanisms and transparency and things they can trust, that they can use easily in that aspect to be able to deal with that. The SMEs are most in danger when it comes to unsustainable debt, particularly the ones who are trying to survive. The massive micro businesses are less likely to allocate their revenue to carbon reduction activities, mainly because they're working in very narrow profit margins. So again, if we go back to those people where they are using vans, and that's 3.4 million basically who are using vans as part of their business, in fact maybe the main part of their businesses, and they're operating on a really narrow profit margin. So they may want to do more, but they may be hampered in what they can do. And that's really important. Just to say a bit more about the transport, and one of the reasons we're concentrating on transport is it cuts across various sectors. It's the largest emitting sector, as we know, in terms of 28% of greenhouse gas emissions in the UK, and increased road traffic is offsetting improvements in vehicle fuel efficiency. But when it comes to SMEs, the majority of privately owned vans are operated by SMEs and sole traders, who have only grown in the past 20 years, and particularly in the past year in terms of the courier and delivery area. So that's a significant area to explore more because it offers opportunities, obviously. Okay, if we move on. So again, there's a consistent theme that emerges from research over years, and is even more prevalent now in terms of needing clear and consistent usable guidance. Basically, we go back to principles that actually underpinned the creation of gov.uk, and that content has been proven to work time and again. People don't read online, they scan. We all do this. We take in most 20% of a page. That raises a significant risk in terms of what you provide, where you provide it, and when you provide it, and how it's structured, because it needs to be really clear and easy to use. These small and medium-sized enterprises, they need something they can use. They're asking for that. They're asking for support and guidance, but they need it in such a way that they can get it quickly and they can act on it. So move on to the next slide. In this regard, this is where accessibility comes in. So we still have a situation where, at least 8% of the UK population may have no digital skills, 12% are lacking in them, so that's 20%. If you map that to small and medium-sized enterprises and the massive micro businesses being perhaps, people who have, 0 or 1 employees, and particularly construction being the biggest sector, you're talking about people who may not have laptops, mainly use their mobile, and they may have specific access needs. They may be more likely to have needs like, because of dyslexia or other factors. 90% of jobs within the next 10 years will require digital skills. That's a kind of fact. That's our changing economy. So we know that over time, policies change and users' needs change and technologies change, and technology is changing really, really quickly. And that repeats the need for simple, easy to use guidance and support. When we design for those most in need, you're maximizing the potential for everyone to be able to use it and act on it. And actually it lowers the risk significantly. It also enhances opportunity for awareness. And one of the things we're seeing that's emerging that we're going to be exploring is the key elements in the user journey that need to be amped up are really at the beginning around awareness and triggers to actually start your journey. Okay. So we have, again, a theme of collaboration and collective action being key to the journey. So again, we have these SMEs who are early adopters, and they may see opportunities and growth benefits being more competitive. There's research showing that SMEs may, that actually it may be a potential lever if people are able to compete with others to show that they're being really energy efficient, frankly. And there's energy, there is actual evidence to show that. Move on. So we come to emotional needs, and this isn't just the warm and fluffy stuff. This is actually really, really important, because obviously when we're talking about businesses, we're talking about people, we're not talking about robots. So there is obviously, decades now of research to show that stress affects your ability to process information. Literally, you get cognitive overload. In terms of
Just going to flag that we try and move on to the next one quickly, if possible. So sorry, no, there's loads to say.
Yeah, but the other factors are trust and confidence to act. So having the capacity to act is affected by trust. Trust in institutions is at an all-time low. People value transparency. They want to see fairness of conduct. So they really need to be able to trust what they're getting. The ability to risk is a big factor, because the technologies are changing so quickly. So being able to, do I want to invest 8,000 or 16,000 in heat pumps if that's going to be outmoded in the next 2 years? That's a factor. So that all builds into the emotional overload, basically. So we have to provide guidance that's easy. Okay, so we have some emerging hypotheses that relate to this, speaking the same language as our users. When we talk about that, that's what we're talking about, is basically jargon being confusing to businesses. Only half of organizations feel they fully understand the term net zero, and 2/3 are confused by all the carbon jargon. We're basically talking we're basically using two different conversations. There's for the majority, if you're talking about the majority of SMEs being micro businesses, they don't necessarily think of themselves as SMEs or use the phrase net zero. And in fact, you can see that even in the adverts that are targeted to what we'd call citizen facing audience, that uses language of carbon reduction, not net zero. It talks about, climate change. It talks about business. It doesn't talk about SMEs. So that's a real, bridging that divide is really, really essential. And we know that 2/3 of businesses don't want to be seen as greenwashing when it even comes to setting targets. And they feel that 86% feel that net zero might be in danger of becoming a meaningless statement. So we need to reframe the narrative. And one of the key elements around this is around smart meters. So we've had creating a smart energy grid is key to meeting net zero targets. That's research shows that repeatedly. People want to do stuff that is actually going to make an impact. This obviously isn't just about signing up 1 million businesses to a commitment. It's about making a real change, and it has to be a seismic change in frankly consumer and supplier behavior, as multiple research shows. So you can't do this without having smart meters. And the uptake in smart meters, there's only 34% of domestic and 40% of non-domestic smart meters that are smart meters in smart mode just now. The biggest number of SMEs is the micro businesses. So those are also the biggest sector that we need to reach. So we change the narrative. The narrative so far has been around smart meters can help you manage your energy. Actually, there is an opportunity here to reframe that in the context of, actually, we need to build a smart energy grid so we can manage supply and demand for electrified heat and transport in the future. And you can be part of that, and that will help build back Britain and build a green economy and level it up. And that's what we're talking about. In terms of bridging the narrative between citizen and business, what that means is a kind of a spectrum. It's, if you have a lot of very, very smaller businesses, their personal values are more likely, and this is a hypothesis, to be aligned with their business actions rather than necessarily being separated, because they don't necessarily think of themselves in those, and they may not think of themselves in those traditional terms. So for instance, you're seeing a massive growth in social enterprise businesses and, community companies as well. So language raises awareness and creates behavioral change, and also can help with selling the benefits of business, economic change for business. as well as compliance. And again, this comes back to supply chain influence can be a major factor.
I'm so sorry to butt in because I wasted a lot of time at the start doing bad slides, but we've got 4 minutes left on the clock, so I'm going to hand over to Padma if that's okay. Thanks. We'll share all the slides after.
Okay, hello. So yes, I'll just whiz through what's coming out of the user research and the surveys and the interviews. It's largely corroborating the things that Katrina's been saying. Next slide, please. Yeah, so we've had 134 survey responses so far. We've still got plenty of room to analyse more, so please send out reminders, ask people if they've got 5 minutes. It literally takes just 5 minutes. So in terms, I'm just going to pull out a few of the things that are coming out of it. So these are actions that that respondents have either taken or are planning to take. And what we're seeing is like lighting, electric vehicles and recycling are the biggies. Next slide, please. What are the blockers? Money is a big one. You know, this is the perceived blockers. Money, not knowing where to start and not knowing where to find help are two big ones. So that sort of obviously suggests a kind of a content-based solution in terms of providing advice to make that easy for people. Next slide, please. Yeah, the current priorities for the respondents. Obviously, COVID's having a big impact on people's thinking. Environmental impacts in terms of the people who respond, it's perhaps unsurprising that they're aware of environmental impact, but in general, it does seem to be that that businesses do care about this. They are aware about this. They want to make positive change, and they want help to know how. And then growth and staying competitive are the other two. Brexit is a factor as well. Next slide, please. So we asked what financial impacts they thought carbon reduction would have on their business. Most people think it'll cost money. A lot of people don't know, which is again sort of like lending itself to a kind of providing advice that will help people understand the situation. A lot of people think it won't affect it, and a bunch of people think it will save money. Next slide, please. So this is, we've done a bunch of one-to-one interviews so far. We've got plenty more that we're going to be doing. But so these are kind of like early findings. As Katrina said, confidence is a real issue. So small businesses, we're asking them to make significant investments. So, you know, if you're buying a new van or if you're, whatever you're going to be doing to try and transition to net zero, you need to be confident, firstly, that the policies aren't going to change and render your kind of investment obsolete. They need to feel confident that they're investing in the right stuff to make a difference. And therefore they need information to feel confident about that. They need to feel confident that they've calculated their carbon footprint properly, and that the information that they're getting is correct. So this all kind of lends itself to this kind of content design approach of kind of clear, succinct, easy to find, in the language of the user, stuff that Katrina was talking about. SMEs do care, they are aware of the issue, but they need help. And this again lends itself to this trusted service that provides, it needs to be expert, it needs to be comprehensive, but it also needs to be kind of genuinely helpful, accessible, findable. And one of the issues that's coming out, it needs to be kind. So, you know, people are feeling judged about this, they're feeling uncomfortable about this, they've got other issues that are impacting on their awareness. There's a lot of people very stressed in the UK at the moment because of the impact that COVID's having on their finances. They're having to make their long-term co-workers redundant, they're going out of business, as well as all the stuff that's happening in their personal lives. You know, people are knowing people who are very ill, and you know, so it's a difficult time, and it will be economically for some time to come. Network is important, yeah. So if you don't have the ability to hire a sustainability consultant, you need to find the information from other places. People are doing this in informal networks at the moment. I think becoming a hub for that kind of informal network is a real opportunity for this, the service that we're talking about. User-generated content is an aspect of this. There are passionate early adopters that are very, very well versed in the information and can provide peer support and would be willing to do that. So if we can kind of create this hub for that, I think there's an opportunity there. And also potentially a kind of a carbon neutral marketplace where people can trade with each other, like people are trying to clean out their supply chains, and that's one idea. Net zero is a muddy term, so if you're talking about these early adopters and you're wanting these people to be advocates for what you're doing, we need to be kind of careful about how we position this stuff. There are carbon reduction and offsetting are two different things, and there are companies that just want to tick the boxes so they can win the tenders and aren't really changing their behaviour, and that's kind of looked down upon by the people who are passionate about this and who are really, you know, transitioning and spending money out to transition and spending a lot of time making the right choices and doing the research. So I think if we want these people to be advocates and to help others, we need to be clear that we are keen for people to make proper impact, not just tick boxes. I've already talked about that, so let's just move on. The service that we end up developing as a result of all this will change over time. Right now it's about crossing the chasm. So if you go to the next slide, I'll sort of talk about what that means. So you'll have perhaps seen this graph before. It's a standard graph for kind of launching new products. The situation that we're in the UK at the moment with going net zero, we've got these very educated, very passionate early adopters, and what we're trying to do is move towards the early majority, sort of mainstreaming net zero. That the gap in between the early adopters and the early majority is sometimes called the chasm. We need to cross this chasm. It's not a straightforward thing to do, that's the kind of the mindset we need to have when we're designing this service. How can we get the early adopters to support the early majority and kind of bring them on board? Once we've got this kind of mainstreamed, then the service will need to change to reflect that. At the moment, this is a new idea for a lot of people. I suppose the other thing to point out is that this is from a mental model of wanting to transition to net zero. A lot of people don't think like that. A lot of people are like thinking one thing at a time. Oh, next time I'll buy an electric vehicle. Oh, let me swap my light bulbs out. Oh, you know, like let me sort out the insulation, etc., etc. They're not thinking in terms of this big plan to transition. And then just to kind of close off my bit, this is one thing we're starting to think about, a kind of a map for a content model that would support the various needs that are starting to emerge. By needs, I'm talking about the needs of users, and how do we kind of create user journeys that allow them to come in where they want to come in with their need, to find the content that they're after in the right language, that works for them. And this is kind of one early way of thinking about how we might supply that, and how does this work fit into the wider ecosystem of content that already exists. Okay, I'll hand over. You're on mute, Linda.
Okay, having a technically challenging day. I am going to skip a lot of this because I think I can see Katrina's being like beavering away on chat from her expression. Is there stuff coming in chat that we want to talk through? Basically, what we're going to do, we have 2 more weeks in earnest on this project. Most of that is going to be focused on these deep dive user research interviews, developing more of the visuals that Padma started to show, but from a user point of view. So what are their journeys looking like? What is the SME ecosystem looking like? Who helps, who hinders? We're going to do another show and tell in 2 weeks. And after that, hopefully all of the gory details that you're keen to see will be available in our final report. So I keep.
I was just gonna add to that. Thanks to everyone in the chat for all your comments and questions. Just to say, first of all, yes, we do have references for all the stats we've been sharing, and those will be most likely going into our final report, and with a massive appendix of sources where we've been doing somewhat of a PhD kind of level of research, and the slides will be available. So that's really good. And it's also been really useful to see lots of your comments. I'm just trying to see any specific. I think. Yes, I think some of the things are that we will follow up. Obviously, I can see there's a couple of people who've provided details of emails that we can follow up conversation, which is really useful. But if anyone has any kind of specific questions just now for any of the presenters, or indeed anything else, then do please say, because we're happy to stick around as long as, well,
we actually don't have very long, because the Zoom will time out. Yeah. So, but if anyone wants to unmute, that would be fab.
Yeah. And as you know, this is an agile iterative project. So these are
last sprint. So this is the middle of three sprints. I'm really sorry, I'm gonna have to try and mute people. Is it okay to try and keep your mic on mute, just because there's quite a lot of interference for people who are new to the call, if that's okay?
The sound coming from me. Can you put yourself
okay, there we go. Brilliant. So this is, I was saying, we're in the middle of, we're actually towards the end of the discovery phase. We've only got 3 sprints, so we're trying to learn a lot very, very quickly. Last sprint, we did this massive study of the entire SME sector, interviews with some SMEs. We surveyed them, and that was all to decide the most useful place to start really deep dive interviews. And I've lost my thing now. So the sprint, our starting point was to try and figure out where we might do deeper dives. So we prioritized some groups of SME. We focused more desk research on them. So we're going to talk you through that. We started our one-on-one interviews. These are the deep dive things where we test all these emerging hypotheses with people to get their feedback on what motivates them, what blocks them, and what we might do to help them transition more quickly. And those are going to really, really ramp up from now. They're already kind of kicking off.
Can I just interrupt for a second, Linda? Are you intending to share the slides as you're talking, or are we not started with that yet?
Oh, no, we're totally intending to share this. I have not properly. We're not showing the right screen then. Okay, so are you looking at my presenter view, or are you looking at nothing?
We can just see your face.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Thank you for flagging that, Padma. Well done. Okay. Oh, do you know what? Okay, pause. My apologies. Rookie mistake. I'm going to have to reverse these things. I've got too many screens. I was more organized with my presenter view this morning, but not with the share screen. Here we go. Not with the share screen. Okay, can you see the whole of that slide? Yeah, okay.
Yep, that's good.
I think so, yes.
Okay, so this is what I was rattling through.